Many Pokemon have a chance to hold items when you find them in the wild. So if you find an Aeron, for example, there's a 5% chance that it'll have a hard stone. So what's up, fellas? I'm Matt, and that's what Elias and I are going to talk about today. We'll take a look at a bunch of other items wild Pokemon hold onto, and discuss some really strange game mechanics along the way. Alright, let's get started.
What's up, I'm Elias, and the odds of finding held items on wild Pokemon can vary wildly. Here's how the system works starting in Gen 3. Some Pokemon have rare items, which they hold 5% of the time. Other Pokemon have common items, which appear at a rate of 50%. In Gens 4 through 6, Sneasel and Weavile's common item is a Grip Claw.
But if a Pokemon has the same item in the common and rare slot, they'll be guaranteed to hold it in the wild. If you find a wild Volcarona in Gen 7 or 8, it'll always be holding a Silver Powder. There's also an extra rare tier of items, but they're exclusive to Gen 5. Some Pokemon have a 1% chance to hold these items, but only if you encounter them in Dark Grass. In Black and White 2, Dark Grass Heatmor has a 1% chance to hold a Flame Orb.
You can obtain these items by either catching the Pokemon or stealing the item from them. You could use a move like Trick, Thief, or Covet, or an ability like Magician or Pickpocket. Most items you find in the wild are beneficial to the holder. Charcoal is a rare item for several fire types, namely Torkoal, Vulpix, and Turtonator. That item boosts their stab moves by a small percentage, and many other Pokemon hold type-enhancing items too. But some of them hold items that are meant to be used on other Pokemon.
Okay, one more Baby Bell, and then I have to put these back in the refrigerator, because I'm just like crushing them, dude.
I do not recommend eating 20 Baby Bells in 7 minutes, and
I can't hit my protein.
Just eat an entire turkey every day, brah.
The Aspir Berry thaws out the holder if they get frozen. But most Pokemon that can hold this item can't be frozen on account of their ice typing. It's a guaranteed item for Jinx and Smoochum, and a common item for Cubchoo, Beartick, Dugong, and Swinub. The only non-ice types that hold this berry in the wild are Seal and Crabrawler, but they both evolve into ice Pokemon.
There are several other berries that cure status conditions, and they're also held by Pokemon that are immune to said conditions. The Pecha Berry cures poison, so it's a useful item to have during playthroughs. Across the main series, many early game Pokemon can hold them, like Poochyena, Skitty, and Baneri. But a few poison types can also hold this item, despite being immune to getting poisoned. It's a rare item for wild Stunky and Skuntank, and a common item for Venipede and Whirlipede.
So you know how Rotom-Fan has the ability Levitate, which is redundant since it's a flying type? Well, here we go again. In Black and White 2 only, you can find wild Drifblim holding air balloons in Dark Grass. That item gives the holder a temporary ground immunity, but the balloon pops as soon as they get hit. Since Drifblim is a flying type though, it's already immune to ground.
A while back we made a video about the prices of items. At one point we mentioned the Snowball, which raises your attack by 1 stage if you're hit by an ice type move. That's not a great item to be frank with you, and don't call me Frank. But in Gen 6 through 8, wild Snorunt have a 5% chance to hold one. You can also take one from Alolan Vulpix in Gen 7 or Snom in Gen 8.
While Plusle and Minun have a 5% chance to hold a similar item in Oras. The Cell Battery works the same way the Snowball does, but you have to be hit by an electric move instead. Wait, hang on, how many of these items are there? Okay, apparently it's just those two. Game Freak made an item that's affected by electric moves in Gen 5, added an ice-type version of Gen 6, then called it a job well done and went to sleep. Sure, why not? Anyway, a handful of other Pokemon can be found holding cell batteries in Gen 7, namely Alolan Geodude and Graveler, as well as Charjabug.
There are 2 similar items that are tied to water-type moves, but they raise different stats. The Absorb Bulb raises a special attack if you're hit by a water move, and you can find it on various wild grass types. Depending on the game you're playing, it can be held by the Cottony line, the Oddish line, and or Petalil. It's also a dark grass item for Roselia in Black and White 2. The Luminous Moss boosts your special defense upon taking water damage, and only wild Corsola can hold it.
I'm reading something on Facebook. Give me a second.
Do you hate yourself?
Each pair of games has version-exclusive Pokemon. You can find Seedot in Pokemon Ruby, but Lotad is exclusive to Sapphire. A handful of games have version-exclusive gym leaders as well. Drayden runs the Dragon Gym in Pokemon Black, but Iris is the leader in White. But Diamond and Pearl have, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, version-exclusive wild Pokemon held item odds. Not only that, but those odds belong to Pokemon that aren't even in the original Sinnoh decks. You can't find them in the wild without help from another game.
Diamond and Pearl are well known for introducing a ton of new evolutions for old Pokemon, but for whatever reason, most of them weren't included in the regional Pokedex. If you want to get a Magmortar or Electivire, you need to use dual slot mode on your DS. By inserting a Gen 3 game into the GBA slot, you can change which wild Pokemon spawn in certain areas.
If you're playing Diamond and Pearl, you can put a copy of Fire Red in the GBA slot. Then, if you go to Route 205 or the Valley Windworks, you can encounter Wild Elekid. In Pokemon Pearl, Elekid's rare item is the
Electrizer.
I know how to say it. I wrote the script.
Oh, did you now?
My name is Matt, innit? In Pokemon Pearl, Elekid's rare item is the Electrizer, which it'll eventually need to evolve into Electivire. But in Pokemon Diamond, it's Elekid's common item instead.
The same thing happens in reverse with Elekid's partner in crime. By inserting a Leaf Green cartridge instead, you can find Magby in Route 227 or Stark Mountain. In Pokemon Diamond, it has a 5% chance to hold a Magmarizer, which is required to evolve Magmar to Magmortar, but it's a 50% chance in Pokemon Pearl, so getting Electivire is easier in one game, and getting Magmortar is easier in the other.
These are trade evolutions as well, so if you wanted one of these Pokemon before Platinum or Battle Revolution came out, the full process required 3 games. You needed a copy of Fire Red or Leaf Green to use dual slot mode, then 2 copies of Diamond or Pearl to pull off the trade. But if you picked the wrong Gen 4 game, your odds of finding the item in the first place are 10 times lower, compared to the other version. Fortunately, this issue was somewhat remedied in Pokemon Platinum.
You see, this nonsense is why completing the Pokedex, the whole thing about catching them all, just is not appealing to me, because, like, you've got to jump through so many ridiculous hoops.
But you gotta catch them all. You cannot put the game down until you catch all of them.
In the upgraded version of Sinnoh, Electabuzz and Magmar can be found in the wild normally. Now they both have their evolution items in the common slot.
Extremely loud, incorrect buzzer.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Electabuzz has a 50% chance of having an Electrizer, but Magmar only has a 5% chance of having a Magmarizer. Well, the good news is you can just find these items in the overworld now. You can pick up an Electrizer by the Valley Windworks and a Magmarizer on Route 214.
Held items are a cornerstone of competitive Pokemon, and you can find quite a few good ones in the wild. The Life Orb is a common damage boosting item because it doesn't lock you into one move like the choice items do. That means you can run a boosting move like Nasty Plot and switch moves on the fly if the situation calls for it. The Life Orb also pairs very well with the ability Sheer Force. Across the entire Pokemon series, there's just one Pokemon that holds Life Orbs in the wild. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire only, it's a 5% item on Wild Absol.
Wild Munchlax and Snorlax are guaranteed to hold leftovers in select games. In fact, you can even get leftovers from a Snorlax that originated in Gen 1. Held items don't exist in Red, Blue, and Yellow, but if you catch a wild Pokemon in those games, they'll always be holding an item when they're transferred to Generation 2.
Somebody should catch an entire national dex of shiny, perfect IV with nature Pokemon.
Absol Blogs Pokemon, do I have the perfect video for you?
Oh, they already did it?
No, but he's a shiny hunter, he does level 100 gauntlets. If it weren't so insane, it would be right up his alley. The item you get depends on the Pokemon's catch rate. Snorlax and Clefable are the only Gen 1 Pokemon with catch rates of 25, and that corresponds to leftovers. Well, sort of. To be more exact, many catch rates correspond to placeholder items called Teru-sama, which turn into different items when the Pokemon arrives in Gen 2.
When you transfer Gen 1 Pokemon to Gen 2, most of them will be holding either a regular berry or a bitter berry, but a handful of Pokemon will hold TMs when you transfer them. Krabby, Horsey, Goldeen, and Staryu all have a catch rate of 225, which corresponds to the Ice Punch TM. Both forms of Nidoran will hold the Detect TM, and Aber will hold Psych Up. Wild Pokemon that are native to Gen 2 can hold these items as well, but in these games, the common item rate is just 23%, and the rare item rate is 2%. The odds weren't boosted to 50% and 5% until Gen 3.
Weakness berries are also occasionally used competitively, because having super effective damage can be a lifesaver. Many wild Pokemon can hold a berry that corresponds to one of their weaknesses. Ponyta and Rapidash have a 5% chance to hold a Shuca berry in some games, which halves damage from a super effective ground type hit. Gible and Gabite can hold the Haban berry, which halves dragon type damage, and so on and so on. But there are plenty of held items that wild Pokemon won't hold. You can't steal the choice items or Assault Vest from anything.
A few Pokemon have species-specific items. The Light Ball doubles both of the holder's attacking stats, but only if said holder is Pikachu. Most signature items can also be found in the wild. In most cases, that's the primary method of obtaining the item in the first place. In each game since Gen 3, the Light Ball is a rare item for Wild Pikachu. You can also find Wild Farfetch'd holding Sticks, Wild Marowak holding Thick Clubs, and so on and so on.
Clamperl has 2 signature items of its own. The Deep Sea Tooth can either double Clamperl's special attack or evolve it into Huntail. Meanwhile, the Deep Sea Scale doubles special defense or triggers the Gorbis evolution instead. But Wild Clamperl will never hold these items. Depending on the game you're playing, it can hold a Blue Shard, a Big Pearl, or a regular Pearl. But you can get its evolution items from entirely different Pokemon. Hi Matt, what are your thoughts on Clamperl?
It clamps that pearl.
So true.
Starting in Gen 4, Wild Huntail and Gorbis can hold their respective items at a 5% rate, but you can also swipe Deep Sea Teeth and Scales from unrelated Pokemon. Starting in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, Carvanha and Sharpedo can hold Deep Sea Teeth, and Chinchou, Lantern, and Relicanth can hold Deep Sea Scales. In Gens 5 through 7, you can also get these items from Wild Basculin. The item you get depends on which form of Basculin you find. The red striped form holds teeth, and the blue striped form holds scales. Then, once you find these items, you can give them to Clamperl. That's symbiosis in action. I guess.
Speaking of water types from Hoenn, let's talk about Love Disc. There's a 7.8 out of 10 joke here somewhere, but I got nothing. Love Disc is not a strong Pokemon. Its stats are repulsive, its move pool is putrid, and its abilities are, well, I mean, they're fine, but you know how many Swift Swim users there are in this game? Gazillions. And you know how many of them are stronger than Love Disc? Basically all of them.
Love Disc is one of the worst fully evolved Pokemon in the game, but it used to have a unique niche. There are a few ways to farm heart skills, which are a valuable item in some cases. The move reminder is a character in most games, and most of them teach moves in exchange for heart skills. One way to obtain them is by encountering Wild Love Disc because they hold heart scales 50% of the time.
Love Disc made its return in Scarlet and Violet, but it basically has nothing to do in these games. That's because the move reminder is no longer a character in Gen 9. It's just a standard menu in Scarlet and Violet, and you can use it as many times as you want for free. So barely anyone pays Love Disc any mind anymore, and it just swims around the Paldean Seas completely unbothered. I would love to swim around the seas completely unbothered personally. Because I'm Elias and I can swim.
Have you seen the stuff that's down there? To add insult to injury, heart scales also don't exist anymore in Gen 9. You can't even sell them to a random clerk for 50 bucks anymore. Yeah, these things are borderline worthless, but the move reminders love collecting them anyway. Pokemon's currency is based on yen, so 50 Pokedollars is equivalent to about 34 US cents. You know what I can buy in real life for 34 cents? Nothing. You know, for some reason, this comparison reminds me of the 50 state quarters they used to make. The US Mint created 5 commemorative quarters a year for 10 years, and each one represented a different state. Like heart scales, they were worth just a few cents a piece, and a lot of people liked collecting them. MEPlaysGames fact, Elias is all 50.
Speaking of selling items, you can steal some pretty valuable stuff from certain Pokemon. The Nugget is one of the standard items with a high sell price. Depending on which game you're playing, you might be able to yoink them from Wild Meowth, Grimer, Muck, or Garbodor. If you go into the Dark Grass in Gen 5, you can also find Trubbish holding regular nuggets, or Garbodor holding big nuggets.
Quick update, Elias now has 49 state quarters. While he was busy reading that paragraph, I broke into his room and stole his Montana coin.
Get out of my house!
No, I live in your walls. Besides Clamperl, you can also get various sizes of Pearl from Shelder, Cloyster, and Gulpin, the latter of which only holds big pearls. The Comet Shard can't be sold in regular Pokemarts in Gen 5, but there's an Ore Maniac in Icarus City's Pokemon Center. He'll give you a whopping 60,000 Pokédollars if you sell him a Comet Shard. The only way to get unlimited shards is in Dark Grass though. It's a 1% item for Clefairy, Solrock, and Lunatone.
Ditto has 2 signature items, but neither of them are any good. Starting in Gen 3, Wild Ditto have a 5% chance to hold the Metal Powder. This item doubles Ditto's defense and special defense. In Gen 4, Quick Powder was added to the game, and it became Ditto's common item. This bad boy doubles Ditto's speed, but there's just one itsy bitsy tremendous titanic problem.
These items only work if Ditto isn't transformed, but Transform is the only move it can learn, which means these items virtually never do anything. Even if you were to run out of power points, Struggle is an atrocious move starting in Gen 4 because the recoil damage is a quarter of your max HP. So even if Ditto holds a Metal Powder with no power points, it's going to faint pretty quickly. You're better off transforming into something else.
Starting in Gen 5, Ditto has the ability Imposter, which immediately transforms it as soon as it enters the battle. Since the powders only work on a non-transformed Ditto, they're borderline worthless items. In any case, the vast majority of wild Pokemon no longer hold items in Gen 9, and that includes Ditto. For the few Pokemon that do still hold stuff, the common slots odds were lowered by quite a bit. Amoonguss and Breloom used to have a 50% chance to hold a tiny mushroom, but starting in Gen 9, it's a 30% chance instead.
Very few new Pokemon were given held items in the wild, but there are a couple of exceptions. Toedscool and Toedscruel can also hold tiny mushrooms, and the Booster Energy is a rare item for all the wild Paradox Pokemon. That's a very useful item because it boosts their highest stat by 30% or 50% if it raises speed, so many of them use Booster Energy in competitive play. If you catch a Paradox Pokemon in Area 0, they have a 5% chance to hold this item.
What is happening outside of my house right now?
Earthquake.
Oh, whoopee. You know I slept through the last earthquake that hit New York? The held items you can find with this method vary widely from from game to game, because it depends on which Pokemon you can find in the wild. If you want to look for wild held items in your own playthroughs, Bulbapedia has more precise info about which ones are available in specific games. If you look at their pages about held items, you'll find wild Pokemon data for each game. Can't I just vibe on the surface for all eternity?
No.
Let me live my life, Matthew. I can't be nerding out about math on the internet, because then people will think I'm a nerd.
Right, and talking about Pokemon will do so much better for you.
No, talking about Pokemon is, very much a jock thing to do. No, it's not.
Everybody knows that the only people who talk about Pokemon are jacked up steroid users, like myself.
Your Pokemon are horrible.
Excuse me, I don't care that my Pokemon are horrible. They're my Pokemon, and let them be horrible if they want to be horrible.
Are your Pokemon about to go out and commit heinous crimes?
I have a lot of them. I could probably take over Team Rocket with this amount of Pokemon.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Considering how weak most of Team Rocket's Pokemon are.